Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our full review of the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5. So Hyperion Elite 5 is the latest flagship carbon plate racing shoe within the Brooks range. It replaces the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 PB, which was the PBA version of the Hyperion Elite 4 that introduced the DNA gold foam that's used in the midsole of the Hyperion Elite 5 as well. It's a pretty expensive shoe. It's £240 or $275. So in the US, I'd say it's more expensive than most other carbon plate shoes. It's probably in the middle of the pack in the UK, but there are certainly cheaper options available. It's the lightest Brooks carbon plate racing shoe yet. Brooks say it weighs just under 200 grams in a US size 9. This is a US 10, and I've got a couple of different weights on my shoes, 203 grams or 212 grams, but either way, it's 7.5 ounces, certainly a very lightweight shoe. Got an 8mm drop from heel to toe and a stack height of 40mm at the heel, 32 at the forefoot. You've got a very thin and breathable upper. It's very open, as you can see at the front of the shoe there. You've got a TPU coated yarn used for it with very minimal padding throughout the shoe, as you'd expect on a racing shoe. There is a strip around the heel at the back there. No real internal heel counter to speak of though. Then the midsole is Brooks' DNA Gold foam, which is a PBA-based foam. It's a lightweight, springy foam, a foam that Brooks really needed to add to its range after they stuck with nitrogen-infused EVA for quite a long time. You can see it's got these distinctive bubbles on either side of the shoe that Brooks say are basically there to try and create the weight-saving benefits of a cutout without really sacrificing stability. So it's an interesting idea, and it does mean that they can shave a bit of weight off the shoe without just having those huge gaping cutouts you see on a lot of carbon plate shoes, especially on the medial side. You have an Aris Speed Vault Plus carbon plate running through the midsole, and one advantage Brooks says its carbon shoes have is that its carbon plate is made for each different size rather than just being resized. I mean, I'm not sure how much the benefits really translate in real world running, but sounds good. And then you've got a very thin outsole, which is just 1.5mm thick. It's speed tack rubber, good forefoot coverage, couple of strips at the back, the usual setup we see on carbon plate shoes. No big cutout on the bottom of the shoe though, which is a lot of brands do this, especially in the middle of the outsole, just to try and reduce a bit more weight. Brooks hasn't felt the need to do that, and it is still, a very lightweight shoe.
Quick word on fit then, and in testing I ran in a UK 8.5, US 9.5, that is my regular running shoe size in Brooks. I would say the fit is certainly hugging. It's definitely got what you might call a race fit. It's close to being a bit narrow across the midfoot, but just about stays the right side of all of that, and I think it provides really sort of nice locked in fit. There's not much movement at all in the shoe because it's so snug. I don't mind that in race shoes, particularly if the uppers also have a little bit of flex so you can wiggle the toes, and I get a decent amount of length in the toe box here, more than I got from the Elite 4 PB. I have to be very careful with the tongues, which only just sort of reach across the top of my foot. Heel collar wise, I'd say there's just about enough hold with these small pads. There's a bit more padding here, I think, than the Elite PB4. There's not much by way of support in the heel collars. They're quite low and they're quite flimsy, sort of race shoe standard stuff. Now, if I was running a 5-hour marathon, I'd be tempted to go half a size up in this shoe, just have a little bit more room, though I think I might get too much length in the toe box. That's a worry, but otherwise I would recommend going true to size in this shoe for that really dialed in race fit.
So the fit for me in the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5, really comfortable. I've got this in the UK size 8. I'm a UK size 8, and it's a very spacious shoe. Brooks generally make shoes that are very comfortable and they're quite accessible. So they don't tend to go really tight and lean on shoes. They generally like to give a bit of space so that a lot more people can wear them, and this is no exception, especially considering it's a race shoe. So there's definitely a lot more space before the big toe than I experience in a lot of shoes, and definitely race shoes. A lot of race shoes in my UK size 8 are a little bit leaner and there's a little bit less space, but there's definitely a lot of space before my big toe in the shoe, and around the sides of the forefoot and the midfoot as well. It's not the most restrictive midfoot out there, and that's something that you can experience quite a lot in race shoes. I've got fairly average width feet, so I generally find I can fit most shoes, but race shoes are the ones that I notice are sort of limiting on the midfoot. But this is pretty much a spacious shoe all round. Nice little bit of padding on it, not loads. It's well placed, and the tongue has sort of got this thin layer of padding on it. But all in all, it's a really, really comfortable shoe. I would say stick to your size in this shoe, but notice there is a little bit more space before the big toe than you're probably used to in race shoes. But all in all, definitely a very comfortable shoe in my UK size 8.
So fit has been all good for me in the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5. I've got the right length, enough room around the toes, good hold around the heel and midfoot. I was a bit concerned about this strip of padding around the heel in particular. This is positioned in a place that sometimes does annoy my Achilles. I've had it with shoes like the Vaporfly. Hasn't really been a problem with the Brooks. I don't really feel the benefit of it. I kind of wish they just get rid of it because it sometimes can feel a bit risky to me, but yeah, it hasn't really been a problem. And all around I've had a really good fit with the shoe. This upper is very lightweight, very breathable, but it seems pretty hard wearing. It's held the foot well, so all round, yeah, no concerns on that. I'd stick to your normal running shoe size. So I run around 55 kilometers in the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5, using it for a 10k race as well as a few testing workouts during my training. I think it's definitely true to say that Brooks made a big leap in its carbon plate shoe performance with the Hyperion Elite 4 PB, which was a much better shoe than the standard Hyperion Elite 4 because of that PB foam. It really was as simple as swapping in that foam to the same geometry and everything. It just made it a lighter, bouncier, faster shoe. I think you've got another improvement here with the Hyperion Elite 5. It's not as big a jump as from the Hyperion Elite 4 to the Hyperion Elite 4 PB, but it is a little improvement, I think, with a slightly softer and springier design all round in the Hyperion Elite 5. It's also a shade lighter. In general, the performance has basically lined up bang in line with what I'd expect from a carbon plate shoe, in line with other shoes out there from other brands. On the track, I've run 800 meter and 1k reps, and I did a 10k race on a country roads course, mostly running solo, and did a 33:17, I think. And basically everything I'd have expected from a carbon plate shoe, this is producing. You've got that efficient, fast ride, got a lot of springiness from the foam. It's comfortable enough to do longer runs in without your feet getting too beat up. Moves you onto your toes very quickly, get a nice amount of punch from the plate, and all round just makes running fast seem that little bit easier. Even when I was really struggling in that 10k race, I was able to keep turning over my feet, and I felt like I was performing at a pretty good level. And yeah, it's exactly what you expect from a carbon plate shoe. Now, none of this will really be new to us anymore, but it is fairly new to Brooks because it's only really been happening with the last couple of models of their carbon plate racing shoe that you've had this similar level of performance to other shoes. Like, I even did a track workout with the shoe where I split 2 sets of 800 meter reps, with doing one set in the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5 and one in the New Balance SC Elite V5, and yeah, really felt a similar performance. I slightly prefer the Brooks. I think it's a bit softer and a bit bouncier than the New Balance, but in terms of how they feel in rocking you forward, punching you off your toes with the plate and foam combination, very similar all round, and it's what you expect from a carbon shoe. It's also pretty lightweight, and I do think it's not noticeably unstable as compared to some carbon plate racing shoes. I don't think it's a stable shoe. I mean, these bubbles are a good idea, but I don't think it's made it a really stable shoe compared to some of the carbon plate racing shoes out there, like maybe the Diadora Gara Carbon 2 or the Hoka Rocket X3. They are a little bit more stable, but this isn't as crazy wobbly as some out there, like the Saucony Endorphin Elite or the new Asics Metaspeed range. I think is a bit more unstable as well. So it's got a fairly natural feel for a carbon plate shoe. You do get rolled through and punched along, but you're not getting a really exaggerated ride that you do get from some shoes. Same goes for the rocker, actually. Like, the foam isn't too crazy and the rocker isn't too crazy. It's all just well balanced to help you run fast and feel good, across any distance. So overall, during my run test, it hasn't really stood out as something very different on the carbon plate shoe market. Like, I've enjoyed running in it. The performance is definitely there. I'm not sure it's really standing out from the crowd that much, but I do think this is the best Brooks carbon plate racer yet, and one that is very competitive, at the highest level of performance.
For my testing, I've clocked 30 plus miles, more than 50k in the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5. I've done some slow to cruising pace miles, and I've done an all-out half marathon race where I ran a 1:28, moving around somewhere sort of like the 6-minute, 30-minute miles pace for 10 miles before I eventually sort of dropped down to 7-minute miles because the wheels came off a bit. I've run on roads. I've done a big chunk of that half marathon on sort of more uneven river paths as well, which was interesting as a test for the stability of the shoe. Now, I was a fan of the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 PB, which I had down as Brooks' best race shoe to date, and I think the Elite 5 sort of picks up the baton and moves on with it. They do ride differently to the Elite 4 PB. It's a bit softer, but I don't think there's a huge difference in the sort of performance that you're going to get. So while it might be annoying if you bought the Elite 4 PB and then you were thinking, I have to go out and get an update now and spend more money, I think if you've got the 4 PB, you're probably not going to need to be in any hurry to go and do that. The Hyperion Elite 5 is a good carbon race shoe. It's got all the things you look for. It's light, it's cushioned enough. It's got some big leg sparing spring to it. It's got a hugging race fit. And overall, you've got that kind of lovely sort of light and fast package that you expect from a race shoe. Now, having run 6 miles to the start of my half marathon as well at an easy pace, I can also vouch for this shoe being one of the more stable and protective carbon race shoes as well. It did okay when I was moving sort of 8.5 minute miles. That's something I really like about it. It's kind of smooth and consistent. This would be a shoe that I would sort of happily use for some longer, faster marathon training runs where I'm going to be mixing up the pace, moving from sort of faster to slower, that kind of stuff. When I kicked up to the half marathon pace, as I said, at around 6.5 minute miles, I enjoyed the sort of smooth, fast, light and cushioned ride. I don't think it's quite as punchy as the Puma Fast R3 or the Hoka Cielo X1-2. Probably not quite up there with the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris, which I think has a little bit more stiffness to it. But it is responsive and smooth. I think the DNA Gold foam works really well. What you miss in terms of aggression and propulsion, I think you get back with sort of reliability, sort of landings in an easy, consistent road feel. Even smashing along some of those lumpy bits on the rutted river path, the Hyperion Elite 5 sort of felt controlled. I wouldn't have backed the Cielo or the Adios Pro 4 or the Puma Fast R3 to be quite as kind on that kind of terrain. There's something really pleasingly natural about the Hyperion Elite 5. They're giving back, but you're in control. There's enough stack to soften the repeated impacts, even after 2 hours on feet. I think they'll be able to go longer than that as well. You know, the comfort held out. I also found the grip excellent with some of the twists and turns, though my test miles have all been in dry conditions. On durability, the Elite 5 also doesn't seem to have been troubled too much by that stony terrain, which bodes well for the kind of the durability of this as a carbon racer.
So when it comes to race shoes, Brooks has always made shoes that have lots of elements that are really good for people. They're accessible, they tend to have a bit more space, they tend to be more comfortable, they tend to be more stable than a lot of the other carbon plate race shoes out there, but they don't tend to have the performance benefits of those shoes. So if you're looking for the fastest possible shoe on race day, Brooks hasn't really historically managed to do that, but they offer those other benefits as well. But since I tested the Brooks Hyperion Elite 4 PB, I've been really impressed by what Brooks has got now, and they seem to have combined those benefits that they had before, which weren't particularly performance based, with really high level performance now. So what you're getting is a shoe that sits there in the top tier race shoes, but you also get some nice added benefits like a bit of extra stability, a bit of a natural feel, and the comfort as well. So the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5, really like this shoe, really like the Hyperion Elite 4 PB as well. And I think the reason for that is it feels very light on the feet, it feels very quick and nimble, but it also feels relatively natural as well. It doesn't feel like it's aggressively putting a foot into a position. It doesn't feel like you can't walk in it. If you're walking around in this shoe, it feels okay, and that's not the case with a lot of carbon plate race shoes. They sort of move your feet into a position that feels very awkward when you're walking around in them. But the Hyperion Elite 5, it just feels great. Definitely a bit more stable than a lot of race shoes out there. Definitely a lot more comfortable than a lot of race shoes out there, but it's still really, really fast. I've used this for a couple of 5k races now, park runs now, going at my full pace, and I've found it to be a really great shoe for maintaining my fast pace at park run, which is about 3 minute 40 kilometers. I will go faster than that. I will do a 3:15 sometimes in one of the kilometers, but it feels great for that. It feels fast, it feels nippy, it feels very comfortable as well. And it's a great all-round shoe. So I think it's making super shoe performance features a lot more accessible, and a lot of people will really like that. I think for me, I probably wouldn't use it for a marathon. I do like to have a little bit more bounce in a shoe. I actually prefer a bit more of that aggressive help that you get from a lot of carbon plate shoes, especially in the later stages of a marathon. I don't think I'd get it from this. I think it'd be absolutely fine for a marathon. I just think for me, I'd probably go for something that's a little bit more noticeably helping me and give me a bit more bounce, and maybe giving me a bit more movement from that carbon plate, which you don't necessarily get from this. It's a lot more subtle as a race shoe. But yeah, I think it's a really, really solid option. I think a lot of people will prefer this to the more aggressive carbon plate race shoes out there, because it does feel very comfortable and accessible to wear and natural. The outsole is also really good. If you watch the channel, you know that I tend to destroy most of my carbon plate race shoes. No issues at all on about 40k of running on the outsole of this. Absolutely fine. No signs of any deterioration on the outsole. Feels quite grippy as well. Nice layer on the forefoot. Nice sections on back. And no signs at all of wear and tear on that. So really, really good outsole on the Hyperion Elite 5. Okay, so my verdict on the Hyperion Elite 5, I think it's a solid really enjoyable complex race shoe, that it actually has a few elements that make it more enjoyable, or probably more accessible to people who maybe don't want the aggressive feel of a lot of complex race shoes. It's a shoe that feels very comfortable on the feet. There's a bit more space in it. There is definitely a more subtle shoe. It doesn't aggressively move your foot into a position. It feels a bit more natural, but you do get a bounce and a kick from that carbon plate. It just feels a lot nicer. I think in a lot of carbon plate shoes, if you're going out to do an easy run, it would be really, really difficult. And I've tested a lot of carbon plate race shoes, and easy runs are not enjoyable to do in a lot of them. It's fine in this. I wouldn't suggest doing an easy run in this shoe, but it's a nice test for the comfort level of it and that natural feel where it doesn't feel aggressive. It doesn't feel like it's putting your foot into a position that is uncomfortable, especially for long periods of time. So if you're looking at getting a carbon plate race shoe, and maybe you want something that feels a little bit more natural but still has performance elements that make it a super shoe, I think this is a really good option. And every element of this shoe is about comfort and accessibility, but it's fast as well. It's definitely, for me, up in the top 10 complex race shoes out at the moment, and definitely an option that I've used for a couple of part runs, but I'd probably be using this for some races coming up over the next few months, because I think it's a really solid shoe, and very comfortable and enjoyable to wear.
Verdict then, and it's a close call between the Hyperion Elite 4 PB and this shoe, but I'd say that the Elite 5, is now Brooks' best carbon race shoe yet. It's maybe a little softer and less snappy than the 4 PB, but it carries most of what made the Elite 4 PB good over into the new shoe. It's light, it's comfortable, you've got race-ready uppers, there's a smooth, energetic midsole that might not be the most aggressive, but I think there's also a lot to be said for how smooth, stable and protective it feels, whilst also giving back energy. Now, I said this about the Hoka Rocket X3, and I think the same is true here. The Hyperion Elite 5 has all the hallmarks of a good hedge your bets race day shoe for those races where you might need something reliable and less exposed that's going to ease you home if the struggle bus comes. But that's not to say that this shoe is a slouch either. It's fun, it's capable, it's a fast effort shoe that I really like. I can happily use it for everything up to the marathon. I also think it's got good potential as a first carbon race shoe if you've never run in carbon before, or a race shoe for first time racers as well. However, there's a caveat here. There is quite a big premium added to the Elite 5 in terms of the price, and I think you can probably get as much from the cheaper Elite 4 PB in terms of the performance. They just sort of get to their sort of energy, I think, in a slightly different way. I'm not sure I'd buy the 5 ahead of the 4 PB right now. And also, when you've got the sort of cheaper Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris out there, if you're looking for a shoe that's a little bit more aggressive and I think a little bit stiffer and snappier, then I think the Metaspeed Sky Paris probably tops this still in my book. So yeah, it's the price makes it harder to recommend, but I still think this is a cracking shoe, and I think Brooks is moving in the right direction.
So my verdict on the Hyperion Elite 5 is this is a really good shoe, a step up from what we've seen from Brooks in before. It's going to run very well on races or hard training sessions of any distance. You've got enough comfort there. You've got a lightweight, bouncy design. It's going to be fast, over 5k, over 1k reps, and then have enough support and propulsion to carry you through longer events like a marathon. So if you want a Brooks racer, this is the one to get. But the real question is how it compares to the market at large. And there are still shoes I have ahead of it. Like Puma Fast R3 is the current shoe that's probably topping our lists in general because of its very aggressive rocket ride. It's a really fast shoe, makes you feel very efficient, really works for races of a distance. I've done a 5 mile around a marathon in that shoe and been really impressed with it. And I do think it maybe offers a little bit of an edge on a shoe like the Brooks, which has a more traditional setup. Brooks is probably a little bit more stable, a bit more normal feeling, but yeah, the Puma feels faster. New Asics Metaspeed Tokyo, Sky Tokyo I've started testing yesterday, and that feels fantastic. Again, it's a fair bit lighter than the Brooks, feels a bit more propulsive, a bit more energy coming back from the foam, and those are a couple of shoes I'd probably look at ahead of it. And the Brooks hasn't really noticeably undercut those shoes. It's the same price as the Asics. It's a little bit cheaper than the Puma, but yeah, I think all things being equal, I'd look at those two ahead of it. And there are some shoes that are a bit cheaper actually, that are very high performers, like the Adidas Adios Pro 4, which is a really comfortable design with lots of kind of cushiness to the support at the heel in particular, but then a very fast ride. You get pushed through very quickly, very aggressive forefoot rocker. Again, really fast shoe for races of any distance and a little bit cheaper. You've got a couple of decent Hoka shoes to consider as well. I think the Cielo X1 2.0 is a bit more aggressive, a bit more rockered. I think I'd probably be happier in the Brooks myself for a marathon, just because I do think it is a very fast shoe and maybe has a bit more support than the Hoka Cielo X1 2.0. The Rocket X3 though is a fantastic shoe. I think it's a little bit cheaper than the Brooks, and you're getting quite a supportive, stable ride for a carbon shoe, while still it being a very lightweight and bouncy shoe as well. So there are just good options everywhere these days, and I do think the Brooks has come along and it's going to work really well for anyone who picks it up. I don't think it's really standing out. Like I said in the run test, it's very similar to the New Balance SC Elite V5 for me, which is a good, narrow, nimble, lightweight, propulsive, carbon plate racing shoe, but one that I wouldn't be able to really make a case to go and get that ahead of everything else, and I think that's the case with the Brooks. There are some shoes that I think are standing out a little bit compared to others, like the Asics and the Puma shoes, which I do think are really worth checking out, and then there are lots of other shoes in a similar bracket, and then you're looking at personal preference, price in particular, and I think even on price, the Brooks isn't really giving you a reason to look at this shoe ahead of something like the Adidas. So yeah, a really good shoe, one I really enjoyed running in, very fast racing shoe. You can certainly go and perform your best in it, but it wouldn't be one that would be my first option to check out. That's our review of the Brooks Hyperion Elite 5. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.